sometimes I'm pretending to be tough and I'm scared on the inside. And then other times I love sticking it to the man. It's my favorite activity. So if you tell me no, I'm going to figure it out.
This is the Impossible Podcast, an exploration of stories that broke convention, set new standards, smashed glass ceilings, and redefined the notion of what's possible.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ashley Miles, founder and CEO of Franklin West. I'm a proud girl mom, business game changer, builder and scaler of top consumer media and entertainment companies. And please meet my amazing co-host and dear friend, Megan Rokosh.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Megan Rokosh. I'm the Global Chief Marketing Officer for Havas Health and You. I'm an Aquarian, and I'm so passionate about these topics. I am so excited to bring you these amazing guests with my amazing partner, Ashley, and welcome to Impossible.
So welcome to Impossible, a podcast where we give you a seat at the table to uncover and learn from the incredible raw stories of people who have made the impossible possible.
From professional athletes to global pop artists to movers and shakers in business to multi-billion-dollar beauty moguls to our amazing guest that we have today, an incredible leader in fashion. We're constantly scouring our tribes to bring you the most rewarding, real, raw stories. And we're so excited that you came to join us today.
I am so excited to introduce today's guest, Rebecca Minkoff. Rebecca is first and foremost a dear friend. In fact, we actually met in France at the Cannes Lion Film Festival at the same time that I met Megan Rokosh. So there must have been some good juju in the air. Rebecca is an incredible human. She's a philanthropist and businesswoman and is best known for founding and leading her global fashion brand, Rebecca Minkoff, in 2005 in New York City. Rebecca has retail stores in New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Korea, and is distributed in over 900 stores around the world. Rebecca has also founded Superwoman, a mission-driven initiative most recently to help women live fearlessly. Incredible awards. Hello, New York Move's Power Woman Breakthrough Designer Award from the Accessories Council, Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year Award finalist, Best Interactive Retail Top Innovator at the Fashion 2.0 Awards. I mean, what have you not accomplished, Rebecca? Welcome.
Can I take you both with me and you can introduce me like that all the time?
Yes.
Happily.
So let's hear from you. Tell us your story. Maybe take us back to childhood, California. Let's go early into where we are now. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I grew up in San Diego, California till the age of 9. And my mom was part Amway seller, part flea market goods hawker. And I always wanted to sell something right alongside her. You know, she'd be in this garage that they made into this really terrible office. And I just loved that she was selling and creating things. And so as early as I can remember, I was into making things and selling them. I didn't sell anything at the flea market when she let me set up my own little card table. But I was so excited at the prospect of creating my own jewelry, my puffy paint sweatshirts that I prepared all week for it, and I would go there with her. And she really fostered this entrepreneurial spirit within myself and really my brothers. And there was a through line throughout our childhood of, if you want it, you have to earn it. If you want it, you have to figure it out. I'm not doing anything for you. So the things that most moms do for their kids was not what my mom did. We made our own food, we made our own breakfast, we booked our own summer camps, we filled out our own forms. I just wanted the dance mom that would just sew my ribbons on my shoes, and she was not doing that.
Give us some of your mother's secret sauce, because at the time you wanted the dance mom and you had a different kind of mom, but maybe how has that impacted where you are now?
So it is the signal difference in her raising us that I credit with knowing and having a security of, I'll figure it out. I might not know the answer. I might not know how to do this, but I'm going to figure it out. And I think that sometimes when you feel like the world is crumbling around you and you don't know where to start, and that can be paralyzing. I've always had this, I'll figure it out. It might take me a minute, but that sense of security, even in the darkest moments when you're, facing your company being closed, you're like, well, what will I do next? But I'll figure it out, So I try and raise my kids with that same mentality. I think we're dealing with a whole other breed today. But I try and give them that mindset. Well, if you want that, you got to pay for it. If you want to do this, you got to figure it out, because I know how beneficial it is, even though it's terrible as you're going through it, as you're growing through it.
When you were coming up within that, Rebecca, were there moments where you understood what your mother was trying to do, or did you resent it at the time? And how did it shape your brain? Like, take us inside your thought process as a young girl, and how did that shape the way that you thought and you approach problems today?
I just thought she was being cheap and mean. And it was extraordinarily embarrassing and frustrating. It's weird. As I'm doing it to my kids, I have a pit in my stomach of how it felt to be a little girl. But I know it's the best thing for them. It's kind of like, that they need to have a fruit and vegetable with every meal. So I didn't know, but it's prepared me to be really hands-on and feeling like I could innovate quickly.
So kind of take us now from the childhood into like high school. You graduate high school. What happens next? Give us a little bit more into a glimpse into your journey, childhood into Rebecca now.
So my love of sewing, which I think is an important note here, really came about because my mom once again said, no, I won't buy you that dress, but I'll teach you how to sew. We can go to Joann Fabrics and I'll buy the pattern. And I was just like, no, just buy me that dress. But once I got a handle on the fact that I could create something out of nothing, I was hooked. And as a very awkwardly and painfully thin youth who was bullied for that, the fact that I could create my own garments and make something and go to thrift stores and cut things down and make them my size was incredibly empowering. I should have just been like, haha, I'm thinner than you, but that's another story. So I just became hooked. And so in high school, when I had the opportunity, it was a performing arts high school, to be full-time in the costume department, I took that option. And when all my peers started looking at colleges and debating what they were going to do, I just felt this overwhelmingly strong desire of, I have to get to New York City and I have to start working. And my parents, being non-conventional, said, cool, you were going to pay for college for yourself anyway. So if you don't want to do it, that's on you. And good luck. And so I literally went with 2 suitcases. I flew into Islip Airport because that was the cheaper one. My parents were willing to buy me. If you know New York, it's not close to the city at all. And shacked up with my friend at Fordham University. He would let me sleep on his couch and got a paid internship. I think I was making minimum wage, $3.25 an hour. So it was really exciting, terrifying, but I just was determined to get started. And when my aunt did, beat me over the head with, I'll never make it, I'm going to be a failure, everyone goes to college who has to be successful, I was like, okay, fine, I'll enroll at FIT for, a semester. And I did. And I just found that there were people that were far more talented sketchers, designers than me. But I just kept looking around and said, I can talk, I can communicate. I can't draw as good as this guy, but he can't even open his mouth to present what he's doing. And I just was like, I can't sit here. I felt almost held back by being in school. And I realized that's a personal choice for everybody. But I felt that was the right thing to do. So I just continued to focus on my job.
It's so amazing to hear you just explain how much this took for you to get to where you are in terms of courage. Like, what a gutsy decision for you to make as a young woman, to bet on yourself. And that's been really a red thread that we've seen, Rebecca, and so many people that we've had on the show, is a lot of people said, hey, there was a day where I just decided. When you knew that you had to make the decision to move to New York, were you nervous about that? Were you scared? Did you have to push yourself over the ledge? And what was pulling you through that in terms of vision and inspiration?
Looking back, I wasn't scared at all. I think the scariest thing was how cold it was and how unprepared I was for a New York winter. And like when my mom and I went to Nordstrom and bought me like cold weather gear in Florida, it didn't stand a chance for those winds that come. I think that I was so secure in my decision, and I can't tell you why. I just knew that was what I had to do. And I think sometimes people's courageous decisions are simply because they have nothing to lose. I think when you're young and you're shacking up at your friend's Fordham University couch, like, you really can't go much worse than that, right? Or rock bottom than that. And worst case scenario, could move home and regroup. And so I think that for me, I was not scared. I was definitely scared of the wind and my toes being numb for the first year during winter season. But fear wasn't something that entered in. That happened later, but not in the beginning.
So Rebecca, I want to dive into business, one of my very favorite topics. So walk us through, because you've built this incredible empire, but I'm sure there were so many setbacks and failures and you just kept going. So maybe talk to us about, where you are now in business and how is that going? But give us some live examples of times where maybe you were pulling your hair out. I'm no longer, wanting to do this. It's the stress is too much. What are your strategies to keep pushing forward?
So I just want to be honest and say that still happens. It happened yesterday. It doesn't go away. There's no magical moment in time where you just get to coast. And I think I thought that for a long time, from the early days of not having quality control and having your hardware mixed with Kate Spade's hardware, and having your customer give you a hybrid name that's not nearly as cool as Benifer. That was a huge setback. When your customers don't pay you, when your bank is saying, we're done lending you money, like figure it out, and you don't have enough for the next season's production, to COVID, right? 70% of our business sheared off a cliff. And we literally just had our website and we survived and we turned our business around. But to go through, what so many companies went through and deal with the fallout of that was incredibly scary. I think my techniques for dealing with that is, those dolls that you punch and they get back up. You have to adopt a mindset of, that really hurt. I can't breathe. I'm going to get back up. And that muscle, I think, gets stronger the more you utilize it. There's always a solution. Always. Doesn't mean it's the solution you want, but there always is an answer to it. And maybe it's, again, the road is not straight. So you have to be willing to let it take you sometimes off road and on a new path. We were just exploring something yesterday that I was like, man, I worked 20 years for this to be the outcome. That is disappointing. And then I said, well, you know what? I'm going to make the best of it. And then something changed within an hour and we were back on the road. And so I think that you just have to sign up knowing that, and then be willing to just keep getting back up. And I say this in my book, sometimes success is just being able to keep going or being the last man standing,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing that you bring that up, because every single person consistently who we've had on the show has said an iteration of what you just described, which is this tenacity and this ability to continue when perhaps the people around you were saying, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. And that's part of the reason why we want to share these real raw stories as an element of facing all of these difficult situations and finding something that just allows you to get back up on your feet and to continue regardless of the circumstance. So if you had to articulate what that thing is for us, what would that be?
My credit card bill. I'm a provider for my family and 27 people. And so if I go down, 27 people go down, my family goes down, then there's the factory and the workers, and you just keep extending what your business touches and who that employs. And so when my brother and I looked at, wow, it'd be really easy to go out of business right now during COVID, right? The easier thing to do would have been like, this is going to be hard. It's going to suck. It's going to take everything. We're going to do the layoffs, the furloughs, the pay cuts. And even then we might not make it. So going out of business could have been great, if you didn't want to deal with it. And we said, but look at all these people that are depending on us every day. Look at their livelihoods and their families, and they've put their faith in us. So we have to show up. So we might go down in flames, we might fail, but at least we tried, and they'll know that. And so that's what I fall back on.
Are you okay with failure? Because you seem very comfortable with the option to fail at something.
Yes, I am very comfortable with failure, and I've gotten there because we had a moment many years ago. There's lenders specific to the fashion industry that advance you capital on purchase orders and also on your inventory. It's doing a deal with the devil sometimes, but it's a type of financing that allows you to not have to go raise money, or if you don't have a VC or private equity firm, you can have consistent cash flow for your business. And if they decide to stop funding, or they're like, we don't know, we're going to take your 80% of the receivables. Well, actually, this week we're going to fund 50%, which they've done to us. And so there was one week many years ago, I was in Paris with my former president. We were cheersing to a great week of international sales. We were having champagne and pasta at a restaurant we couldn't afford to be at. And I just get this email that was like, we're done advancing capital, find another source of funds. It's over. That meant we couldn't pay for the next round of production, which means we wouldn't ship, which means we wouldn't be in business. And I just sat there for a second. I said, okay, what is the worst that can happen? No business, unemployed. They can come after me for my assets of what I had, because I also signed that away too. So I lose everything. And then I had this moment where I really got comfortable and cozy with losing everything. And I was like, but they can't take my kids and they can't take my husband. And so if I have to lose it all, as terrible as that is, the things that are truly the most irreplaceable cannot be sold. And so when I hit that and I just faced it, I said, okay, I can do anything. And since then, my mentality on failure has been, well, they can't take the kids and the husband, so I'll figure it out from there.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think that facing your greatest fear, it's a real superpower that I'm not sure you even know how rare that is. I think that's why Ashley's, honing in on that question. I've never heard anybody articulate it in a way that is that comfortable and that direct, and also would really help you with your spirit of innovation, because I think so many of us put a lot of pressure on ourselves to innovate perfectly, which is just not a reality. On the flip side, when you have a hit, so obviously you're playing a volume game and you're putting out all of these different iterations of products. You had some early hits in your career. Do you know when you have a hit? So you're going through that innovation process. Do you know when you're like, okay, I really nailed on something here? Or do you know when you have something that you feel like might be a miss? Or what's your sense of that?
It is like a songwriter chasing their hit, right? And you're like, I can't be a one-hit wonder. This was probably 4 or 5 years ago, but our hits, quote unquote, were running dry. Like the hits had been around and everyone had one. And I sat there for 2 years trying to manufacture a hit. I was like, every mentality, every day I'd go into that design room, like, today we're going to design the next hit bag. And it was not working. And then we had a bag come out. This is probably 3 or 4 years ago, and it resonated. Can I tell you why that particular one did versus the 200 I tried? No, but it hit, and then you get it and you just, you hold on to it tight. And then you're like, I'm going to do it in one size. Nope. 2 sizes, 3 sizes. I'm going to mix up the hardware. I'm going to do it in straw. I'm going to, and you keep it going. And so I think it takes a great product person. I have an incredible president now who's really helped revive the product with me. But man, all companies are chasing hits. A smart gentleman in my industry told my brother once, you just need one hit shoe, one hit bag, and one hit apparel item, and you can be $1 billion brand. And he sort of made examples from different brands. Tory had the shoe, Michael Kors had the one bag, and then that watch. And you're just like, wow. So you sort of get addicted to trying to figure out what that is, but sometimes it just happens. It then happens organically and you can't control it.
I have to ask, was the Yin Yang handbag a hit or a flop? Because I was personally obsessed.
It was a hit, but we cut our fashion very tiny. I think our hits are the core bags. The Black Edie, is probably our best-selling bag, or the Megan Toe is a hit. So we're very conservative with anything yin yang or anything that's, flashy, because that is a special type of customer and it's not for everybody. So it sold out, which was great, but it's very different than something that keeps the lights on for years and years and years.
So going back to earlier and letting go of perfection, which, my God, is hard for so many of us, because it seems like you've really gotten comfortable with that and also comfortable with failing some too. And so I want to go back to customer feedback that you mentioned earlier. How do you handle feedback? We're all getting feedback from friends, family, customers. It's a really hard thing when the feedback is not glowing, right? It's like it sucks. So let's say you get a bad review or your customer's like pissed about X, Y, and Z. What is your process for processing feedback and just moving forward?
So I take feedback differently depending on who's giving it to me. If I get a bad review from someone, I actually don't care because it's never made or breaked my business ever. And usually that person's job is to be as critical as possible and find everything wrong. So it's kind of like, oh, I'm sorry that you're a miserable human. Next. When a customer gives you bad feedback, that probably hurts the most because you've disappointed someone who said, I believe in you, I bought you, and you didn't come through. And I will say with COVID and supply chain issues and products not being available, like to see your customer be disappointed, you're just like, I'm so sorry. This isn't even in my control. Like we're trying our best. We had a scenario, oh man, I guess it was 2017 or 2018 where we were changing over into a new logistics warehouse. And with the software that was being implemented, there wasn't a dry run done. And we decided to launch right before Black Friday. And a Chinese character was entered into a zip code. And I kid you not, it messed up 10,000 orders on Black Friday. So people either bought something and never got it, or thought they were getting something and then got the wrong thing. You name it, it was messed up. And the anger and the vitriol of disappointing my customers was overwhelming. And I kept apologizing every way I knew how. I did it on social. I did it, in emails to everybody. I sent everyone like a free gift. And some people were like, you know what, this still sucks, but thanks for admitting it. And I think that's a really big key is when you've messed up, admit it. Just say, I messed up. I'm going to take responsibility for it and own it. And I think as leaders don't admit that they messed up enough. And I've gotten really good recently at being like, messed up. Yep, that was on me. And I think your team begins to respect you because we're not all perfect. And so when they see that someone's like, oh, they're human too, they make wrong decisions, I think it's actually first of all, it's incredibly freeing instead of pretending. And then they view you differently too. And it sort of diffuses things before it can get to a point where they're just like, oh, well, she's never wrong. Or she does it, she thinks she's perfect. If you're just like, yeah, I screwed it up. Yep, here's what I'm doing to fix it. Then they can't even get to that point with you.
It's liberating and refreshing just to even hear you say that. Because I think so many people hold on to their self-perception so tightly, very, very worried about making mistakes and worried about the impact of owning them. So was that a process that you developed over time? Like at what point in the cycle of your business life and your life did you just say, okay, this is going to be my approach? And was there a situation that kind of prompted that?
I think I do a lot of personal work on myself. And I think I began to observe, I'm not going to name names, people that I work with who will never allow themselves to be wrong and who are always pointing the finger. And I just was like, man, I don't want to be that person anymore. I gotta just own it when I mess up. I'm not saying that I don't do that at home. I hate admitting my wrongness in the household. And my husband says, I never say sorry. So I'm not perfect here, but in the workplace, I just am now of the mindset of like, I'm taking responsibility and I was wrong and here's how I'm going to change. And it's been a lot easier to exist that way.
So Rebecca, so many of us, especially now post-pandemic, we are juggling so many things, right? You have working dads, working moms. We're all managing more than we've ever had to manage before, right? It does seem like you have found this rhythm. I don't want to call it work-life balance. I don't want to call it, anything else, but this rhythm of your kids are brought along on your journey, you're on their journey. It seems to be sort of integrated more than I've ever seen. Help us to understand like how you kind of manage your life and how these things sort of get prioritized in a way where everyone seems to be lifted and supported.
The key underlining that is who are your generals, right? Inside the household and outside of the household. And can you trust them? And I think with my office specifically, when we went down from 60 people to 27, it was very clear who was working and who wasn't. And now it's painfully obvious if you're not working because there isn't anyone to do that job. And so I think that as a team, we've never been more in sync. We talk every day at 10 a.m. to just align on who's owning what. So there's never that camouflaged hole that there might have been before that adds to a workload. I think I also felt as a company, pre-pandemic, I'd be like, the ideal work day would be 10 to 5 because then I could like take my kids to school, maybe do a workout, and then get home in time to hang out with them and eat dinner. Oh, but that could never happen because no one else is going to do that. And if they're not doing it and they're more successful and like, you talk yourself out of it. And then when the pandemic hit, we said, we're going to do a 10 a.m. workday. That's what time we start our calls. And now we don't have an end time because just do your work whenever. And so I was the person pre-pandemic that if someone said they want to work from home, I was like, absolutely not. They're watching a double feature and would walk through the office. And if someone was loafing around on their computer, I'd be pissed. And now it's really about what's best for our business. And so what's best for our business is our employees can work from wherever they want 3 days a week. They start their days at 10. They need to do something in the middle of the day, go pick up their kid who's now quarantined, they just figure it out. And so that's allowed me to have some breathing room, not only as a mother, but for my own personal space. For those listening, well, she's the boss of her company. Of course she can do that. All my employees are doing this. And I think that if you're, working in a company, you might have to stick your neck out and opt for change. And it won't ever happen if you're not the one that takes the risk and says, you know what, you've seen my background. You've been let into my personal life for the almost 2 years. For me to be successful, I need A, B, C, and D. And let me prove to you that I can do this. And then you better prove to them so they're not wrong. But I think, sometimes women can be scared to stick their necks out for whatever it is. And if we don't do it, then no one's going to look over you and say, you look engorged. Do you need to go pump? You look like you need a raise. Do you want to do that? No one's going to just realize this stuff. So we have to demand it. And so I hope more women feel that they're not going to get punished for demanding. It will feel uncomfortable and scary, but they should do it.
Yeah, it's been an interesting lesson through COVID to figure out that people who are applied are applied, period. They're applied if they're out of the office, if they're in the office, and the opposite, I think, holds true as well. I've got a question for you. I mean, obviously the pandemic made such a big impact on our ways of working, but it also totally disrupted the fashion category. So a big part for us of this podcast is, the next generation and helping them figure out their own path. What do you tell the people who are entering in or interested in entering into fashion right at this moment? What's sort of the top 3 things you would tell them?
I would say instead of focusing on your business plan for the next 3 years and a fancy deck all about graphs and statistics and your cost of a customer acquisition, focus on how your brand is going to stand out from 100 other brands. And if you have a white t-shirt, like what is your brand promise, your brand value, your brand opportunity? Who is your customer? What is her perfume? What music does she listen to? Where does she get her coffee? Who are her gurus? And build your brand to speak to that woman and get so specific. And then I would say that you need to have brand values that is not just to be cool or to be part of what's trendy, but that really speak to something you can get behind, because customers want to know what you stand for and what you believe in. And they want to go, that's the tribe I want to be a part of. That's the label I want to say I'm part of this tribe. And so you better know what those things are. And if it's animal rights, if it's human rights, whatever it is, you need to know that and be willing to stand on that, because she's going to wonder and she votes with her dollars. And so yes, you need a business plan, but you need to have a strong sense of what the brand looks and feels like as if it's a human being.
And, staying on the topic of business, you have so much access and connectivity to other founders and CEOs through all of your different, philanthropy and different work that you do. Can you give us maybe a sneak peek into what's on the mind of founders and CEOs right now? Like, what are their pain points? What do they care about? Give us the goods.
I think the biggest thing that I'm hearing is obviously supply chain issues and the uncertainty of when and how. We didn't have any supply chain issues until fourth quarter, which is our biggest quarter. And, our factory was supposed to make 100,000 bags and they're making 3,000 bags. So I know it's a huge problem and it's not necessarily getting better. I think that, founders are who didn't have direct to consumer, are trying to figure out, like, how do we pivot faster and get that section because it seems to be where things are going. And then you have people that have brick and mortar that are like, how do I get foot traffic and people not to be scared anymore? I mean, we've been so put into this mode of being paralyzed and scared of others, and the endless onslaught of marketing, like people's behavior has changed. And so how do you undo that? And how do you do it in a way that people can still feel safe? It's part of why I kept showing at Fashion Week. You know, my husband says I like to stick it to the man. I was like, I'm going to show you that you can still exist and be out there and have community and connectivity. Yes, you have to wear a mask, and yes, you have to get a COVID test, but like, let's go, everybody. Let's get back to as normal as we can. And enough of this insanity.
It's great to hear your sort of rock and roll personality come out, because I love your stuff. And I've always wondered that sort of, you've talked openly about that combination of the bohemian and rock and roll, but you have a true badassery. You do. It's amazing. Like you're a tough cookie. You can feel your courage. You can feel, you're so direct. Your candor is so refreshing. So is that something that developed in you? Because is that from your parents saying, hey, figure this out, you know, innovate on a dime. We're not going to give you handouts. Or were you born with that? Talk to us about that.
I feel like I was probably born with that. There's a video of my brother annoying me on my birthday when I'm 2, and I like go over to him and I hit him and I say, shut up, Ori. And I think that, you know, my mom, and again, who knows, but you know, I was a surprise in terms of gender. And so when I came out, she's like, oh, I'm going to raise her to be tough. She's got 2 older brothers. And so she just raised me to be tough. And I feel like that's come through. But that doesn't mean because she raised me that way that if you're listening to this, you can't become tough. You know, sometimes I'm pretending to be tough and I'm scared on the inside. And then other times I love sticking it to the man. It's my favorite activity. So if you tell me no, I'm going to figure it out.
What are you most passionate about right now? Like, what are you most into? What's on your mind? I feel like you always have something brewing. Give us a little sneak peek into what's going on in that brilliant mind of yours these days.
I'm very passionate about the metaverse. I'm not saying I think it's the healthiest thing to do, but it is where the world is going. And there is going to be a customer there. We dipped our toe into it last Fashion Week. We made 300 digital garments and we sold out in 9 minutes. We had no idea that there was an appetite for anyone to have a digital garment. But I think where we see a world going is where people want to have their avatar wear and represent them online as much as they have the product offline. So we're going to be doubling down on that for February and figuring that out right now. And then how do you go beyond that? You know, if we could all have our Rebecca Minkoff clothing for our Zoom calls that you could just put on the skin, or the Rebecca Minkoff makeup or hair that you could have, right? It takes itself into places where you don't have to play video games, but Zoom's never going away. You know, your selfies are never going away. So how do you sort of bring that Rebecca Minkoff experience deeper into that world?
And you've been a very early adopter of technology, and actually a lot of things. So you seem to be kind of like 2 to 3 years just ahead of the curve in general. Is that through research? Is that through vision? Is that through watching what's happening with your customers? Like, what's your process for seeing forward?
So my brother was kind of the one to lead that for many years. And he had a knack for it in the way that I knew that yellow was going to be the color of summer. And I watched and I sort of began to pick up on signals in the way that he was. And so I was seeing what was happening within music and art with NFTs. And so I just started saying, let's try this. And he's always game for anything. So he was like, yeah, let's do it. And so now, as he's been focused on, you know, really pivoting this Titanic that was our business when COVID hit, I took the lead really on the technology front to ensure that we're still innovating, we're still trying things. And you might be a bigger company with a budget 800 times the size of ours, but we'll do it first. You know, we'll break the mold for people because we're not afraid of failure in that respect, and then see what happens. And then of course, Nike will come in and do it bigger and better. At least we got the foothold of trying, seeing if it worked, adopting it if it did, and then continuing on.
You know, Rebecca, I remember seeing this firsthand at CES in Vegas about 5 to 7 years ago when we had your products incorporated in the Refinery 29 Dreamer Suite. I don't know if you remember that. You were the only fashion designer who was really taking a thought leadership position at an initiative, a trade show, CES. So I just thought that was so impressive. And to me, it was like really showing you and your brother's, partnership through innovation, which was very cool. What is your superpower? If you could just say one superpower that has gotten you to be Rebecca Minkoff, what is it?
Being fearless, but not in the way you think. To me, the definition of being fearless is not that you're not scared of anything. It's that you're scared and you do it anyways. And I think as a friend of ours pointed out on the eve of our See Now, Buy Now show, and I was like, oh gosh, should we really do this? Should we really have bloggers walk? Bloggers were respected at that point, but they weren't good enough to be models. And I was like, what are we doing? Are we doing the wrong thing? And, a good friend of ours who works in PR was like, every time you take the road not traveled, you win. And every time you try and woo the Vogue editor and get, into the click, like make the runway dresses that no one wants to wear or wear anywhere. Has that been successful for you? And he just painted enough examples that I was like, oh, yeah, that didn't work. Okay, this parachute can come off now. So it's not that emotion of fear went away, but it went from doing this to like, okay, I'm diving in and I'm still scared. And so I think that even moving here, right? Like 2 suitcases, nowhere to live. There was a lack of letting the fear stop me.
Do you have a specific process to do that? Like, is it mantras that you say to yourself? Do you call your mom? Do you call your brother? How do you do it?
Well, it's very different now than it was. Now I'm not scared by these decisions at all. Before I'd be like, I'm scared, but okay, cross your fingers. It's like when you're going on the roller coaster and it's going to suck. It's that same feeling. I just was on a roller coaster and I deeply regret it. But my 7-year-old did it and I was like, she can do it. I can do it. And then I was like, this was a horrible mistake. So I think it's like that. And then now there isn't fear associated with decisions. There's fear around like what's happening to our country. There's fear around what's happening in New York City. But that's more the mama in me wanting to protect my children and watching a city go by the wayside.
Rebecca, do you have an inner critic? And if so, how do you manage her? Have you named her? Like, talk to us about that.
I think I used to have a critic, and I've done a lot of work internally to silence her, because I think when people give into that voice, they've lost. That voice isn't you, that you are you. And if you choose to listen to those inner demons, whatever you want to call it, you'll lose. And so I really try hard when I feel that voice being like, well, you should have done that. You could have been. I'm like, all right, focus on something outward, go for a walk, put down my phone, look at the buildings, read a book, listen to a great song, like anything to get out of that. So if you're sitting there and that's beginning, like try things that distract you from that. And I will also say, not that I'm a vitamin seller, but 2 vitamins in particular, vitamin E and vitamin B1, actually help coat the myelin sheathing that exists in your nerves. And so when that's frayed, and alcohol burns up a ton of B1 in your brain, if you don't believe me, you can do the research. And we're all fraying at the ends. These kind of just like, if you're putting on face oil, like get some of these things in, over your nerves. And I think for me, that personally quiets the voices too.
You alluded a couple of questions ago to your personal development process and what that has been. Can you walk us through a little bit of your rituals around that, and maybe some things that have been pivotal in you doing some real soul searching and developing who you are as a person?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we all expect everything to happen instantaneously. We get our Ubers, our food, right? And then you approach mental states and you expect that you could have one counseling session and then I'm free. And so I think it's important that, if you do something for yourself, whether it's daily or you take time off to do it intensively, I've made that something that's very important to me, to take that time. It's not every day that I get to do it, but really sit down and allow myself to figure out how to become a better person. So it's very personal to me, and everyone has a different method. But I think that if you can't just go and never refill that well. So find the thing that refuels you and then make sure you build that into your routine.
So before I turn it over to Megan for our final question, any favorite books, TV shows, anything that you're, diving into that our viewers might should try?
I think I like to watch very stressful TV shows because it puts, when I feel stressed, it puts things in perspective. So that might be messed up. So I love The Walking Dead. I'm like, well, I'm only going to ship 3,000 bags, not 100,000, but at least I'm not being eaten by zombies. Or Ozark, I'm watching right now, which I'm like, well, at least I'm not working for a drug cartel. Things could be worse. Books. I'm not going to lie to you. If everyone's like, how does she do it all? Well, there's a lot of books that my kids are like, did you guys read all those books? And we were like, Mommy, Daddy used to read before you were born. We used to love reading.
I love it. I think that's amazing advice and super relatable. Rebecca, I don't even know if you're aware of how brilliant you are or the superpowers that you have. They have come through very, very clearly. You're a super tough cookie. You're absolutely a visionary. I think what's so cool is now meeting you and spending time with you, I feel like your designs are you and you are your designs. Like it is, you have such a symbiotic relationship between what you create and who you are. And watching your evolution for both of us has been really, really exciting. And it's just great to spend some time with you today. So thank you for that. And our last question, we end on the same question every single episode. And that is, what is possible?
Anything is possible, at the risk of sounding cheesy. It's not about just putting it on a vision board. It's not just about like closing your eyes and humming and saying a secret password. You have to do the work, and the work is going to be hard, and there's going to be seemingly insurmountable barriers. But I had this big shift and sort of breakthrough where I would say, oh, I just want this to happen. And then I'd be like, why didn't it happen? And now it's like, I keep visualizing like it's like Play-Doh. If I want something to happen, I need to mold the clay and make it into the shapes and bring it into the physical universe. And I think you have to do that if there's something that you're passionate about and what you want. And then even if you get it, it's not easy. And so I think you have to just know what you're signing up for. But anything is possible if you truly not just put your mind to it, but get out that Play-Doh and like put the pieces together and reach out to the people that can help you and ask the uncomfortable questions and put yourself in a situation where it might not always be easy or pleasant, but do the work.